Hi everyone, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Flash Season 5, Episode 22 finale video. So obviously, they're all setting up Crisis on Infinite Earths on all the different Arrowverse shows in the finale, so I'll also address that during the video too. But if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Easter egg videos. There's a new round of the Flash Ring giveaway too. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment about the episode on the video. So obviously, spoiler warning for the Flash finale. I'll also address some of the stuff that happened during the Arrow finale too at the end of this. Top 10 WTF and Easter eggs. Here we go. Number 10, Ralph eats a full blast of the mirror gun, and it just completely messes him up. Although, they did kind of tease Mirror World a little bit because Caitlin says all of his cells are inverted somehow, so that might be more Mirror Master stuff that they're teasing in Season 6, because they tease McCullough Industries, so maybe we'll see Evan McCullough Mirror Master as a villain during Season 6 at some point after Crisis. There were a whole bunch of Season 1 references throughout the episode, but one of the ones they made early while they were trying to fix Elongated Man was the Lady Gaga song that they played when Barry first woke up. They also reused the song when Nora woke up for the first time after Godspeed accidentally reactivated her powers. The first half of the episode, for the most part, was really just dealing with the Grace Cicada stuff. I was not a fan of Cicada this season, so I'm really happy that they only spent the first bit of the episode dealing with that. Then they did all the Reverse Flash and Crisis stuff the back half of the episode. So number 9, they figure out that they have to get rid of the dagger in order to get rid of Cicada. It finally all works out, both versions of Cicada, because you have the mind space Cicada that Grace has in her mind when she's an adult, both of them chewing as much scenery as they can get their hands on. I don't know who the director was on set for all their scenes, but they should have told him to pull it back just a little bit. Yes, they're playing a villain on a comic book show, but that doesn't mean they have to be so over the top with it. Either way, they erase her from the timeline, so Cicada isn't a thing anymore. Let us never speak of Cicada again. The explainer for why they had to get rid of the dagger was, one, it was taking their powers away so they were totally vulnerable, but it was also blocking the cure in young Grace's mind. So as soon as they zapped the dagger with the mirror gun, the cure started working again. That's when older Grace started to be erased from the timeline. It's the same effect when Nora got erased from the timeline. It's all a bunch of dominoes being knocked over one at a time by Reverse Flash. It's all part of this long con he's been pulling the last 15 years. But like he explained during the episode, and this is on my list here too, it goes all the way back to the Flash 100th episode when they visited him in the past. So obviously, number 8, Reverse Flash gets his powers back because the dagger's gone in the future. So he kills all the guards just in time because they were getting ready to kill him with negative Speed Force energy. How ironic that they were trying to kill him with the source of his own power. The line, "Gentlemen, I hate to inform you, but you're all dead," is actually an Easter egg for when he killed Cisco during Season 1. When he was talking to Cisco, though, he said, "Forgive me, but to me, you've been dead for centuries." Then boom, he faces his hand right through Cisco's chest. He referenced that again at the end of the episode when Cisco showed up with Team Flash to fight him in the future. He also repeats a line from that same episode where he killed Cisco when he says, "In many ways, Nora has shown me what it's like to have a daughter." In that episode, he tells Cisco, "In many ways, you've shown me what it's like to have a son." He also said, "This is the second time I've been stuck somewhere for 15 years, also referencing Season 1, because when he got into the accident with Barry, when he came back to kill his mother, he had to wait around for Barry to grow up and become the Flash 15 years later so that he could steal his Speed Force powers from him, and you have the events of Season 1 play out. 7 was Nora rewinding time after he killed all those guards. It was a really badass move too, and him going after the guard that had been torturing him this whole time for the last 15 years. Very cathartic moment for Reverse Flash. But because of what Nora and Barry did, they're all still alive in the future, and they changed the timeline quite a bit, so there's probably other changes happening in the future that I'll talk about in a second. They confront him about manipulating Nora this whole time. He admits to everything. "Sorry, this is all part of a long con, but I got this idea when you came back to visit me in the past and asking how to get rid of Cicada's dagger. So, when he was imprisoned in the future, he knew instantly when he saw Cicada's dagger that he would have to wait for Nora to show up and ask for his help, so he would give her the idea to go back, punch the satellite, and they would create a version of Cicada that would start all these events that would help him eventually get out of prison." So it's a whole lot of moves and manipulations along the way, but that kind of explains what the time loop was. Just another example of how them messing with the timeline hurts them in the long run, but like father, like daughter. He even gave her the Flashpoint explainer at the beginning of the episode like Jay Garrick gave him. It's not quite the coffee cup explainer, but it's basically the same thing, where he says, you have to decide what kind of hero you're going to be. Are you going to be a hero that takes a do-over every time you make a mistake? Flashpoint being a huge do-over that Barry took for himself, or are you going to learn to live with your mistakes? Reverse Flash challenges them to a fight, pulls his ring out for a second time, and then they're off. They have a pretty cool fight before Team Flash shows up. So number 6, Reverse Flash pulls a Godspeed move. They finally brought a version of Godspeed to the TV show, so I'm not surprised that they're pulling more Easter eggs from that Flash Rebirth run. If you've been reading the Flash comics, you probably recognize the Godspeed move instantly, so Reverse Flash, when he splits himself into two, isn't creating a time remnant because he then just phases both versions back into himself, and you don't do that with time remnants. They fight Barry and Nora separately and sort of misdirect them. So the thing about this in the comics is that Godspeed calls himself Godspeed because only God has the ability to be in all places at the same time. Godspeed's signature move is splitting himself into two, making himself seem like two different people when really it's just two aspects of the same person. But the problem though when he does that is that both of his aspects become much weaker, so you can actually kill one and you'd have like a half a version of Godspeed left. He'd still be the same person, he just wouldn't be nearly as powerful as before he split himself. So that's why Reverse Flash pulls himself back together before he tries to finally kill Barry, but obviously Team Flash shows up and they fight him. Reverse Flash then, number 5, calls out the Ralph Dibney continuity error from season 1 that I get so many questions about every single season on the show. Hey, did you see that scene where Ralph Dibney was mentioned by Eobard Thawne during season 1? What happened with that? He was supposed to die in the particle accelerator explosion. The reason why I think that happened is because during season 1, when Farouk was coming for Harrison Wells to blame him for the death of all of his friends at Star Labs in the particle accelerator explosion, the writers just needed a whole bunch of names to list off and they wanted to include some Easter eggs from the comics, like here are a couple cool comic book characters that died during this, without knowing that many years down the road they would want to actually use the elongated man Ralph Dibney character on the show. So when they named him during season 1, they did not know that he would be coming on the show later. The way that most of the fans explained it was just by saying that it was a Flashpoint side effect. Because remember, when Barry did Flashpoint, then tried to fix everything, it didn't quite go back to normal. There were still a couple minor changes. But number 4, Nora gets erased from the timeline because of all the changes they've made in eliminating Cicada. It was all part of Reverse Flash's plan. He knew that she was going to be erased. That's why he says, "I'm sorry, little runner, but I had to do this to ensure that I would escape." So he knew all this time that she was going to wind up getting erased from the timeline. But here's the thing though, he also probably knows that Nora herself isn't supposed to exist. She's actually supposed to be Dawn, one half of the Tornado Twins, and she's supposed to have a twin brother also named Dawn. Remember the 100th episode because Reverse Flash says, "That's how I got the idea for this whole plan with Cicada's dagger to free myself from prison because you came back to visit me during the 100th episode and asked about it."
You brought me your daughter. It's, Dawn, if I'm not mistaken.
Nora.
When he sees Nora for the first time, he thinks that she's his daughter, and her name is Dawn, which is obviously a big comic book thing. Dawn Allen, one half of the Tornado Twins, but she says, "No, my name is Nora," so he knows instantly the timeline has already changed, meaning that something happened and there are no more Tornado Twins, they just have one daughter. So because the future is changing so much, it's likely that when we see Nora again, she will be the Tornado Twins and she'll have a brother, and they'll finally pay off that season 4 episode 1 Easter egg, "We're gonna need more diapers." I think it's because they're waiting for the Tornado Twins to show up at some point next season during Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they'll find some way of referencing that. So RIP Nora, she had to die so that the Tornado Twins could live. Also remember, if things as big as, say, Nora are being erased from the timeline, then most anything that you saw during the Godspeed episode could potentially be very, very different in the new version of the timeline. So if you were unhappy with Godspeed, this is their chance to rewrite that character and introduce a much cooler version of Godspeed in a future episode. 3, Reverse Flash says, "See you at the next crisis," obviously referencing Crisis on Infinite Earths because he knows that that's coming up really soon. Remember, Reverse Flash is from the future, so he knows all about when the Flash disappears, how he disappears, the circumstances behind it. So it's no coincidence that he's saying Crisis, but he also probably knows about the advanced timeline and how Crisis is now happening during 2019 instead of 2024. Remember, Reverse Flash is mentioned during Barry's future newspapers, so they'll have to pay off some of those Easter eggs too. Reverse Flash leads an army of shadow demons. So shadow demons all over the place during this year's Crisis crossover. So number 2, all the end credit scenes teasing stuff for The Flash Season 6. Captain Singh becomes the new police commissioner, so Joe West is going to be the new captain of the police department, so we'll probably have more scenes at the police department just because he'll be localized there most of the time. Big one, Cisco takes the cure, so he's not going to be Vibe anymore because he doesn't want Reverse Flash's manipulation to be the reason why he became special. It's kind of a weird explainer because Carlos Valdez, the actor that plays Cisco, doesn't want to be on the show as a regular anymore, but he will come back every once in a while. Of course, he's going to come back for the crossover next year, but he's not going to be a series regular anymore, it seems like. So this is basically him leaving the show. He makes a really special new comic book costume for Killer Frost. We don't see exactly what it's going to look like, but obviously that's going to debut during next year's crossover, so it'll probably be really cool. They go into the time vault with Barry and Iris in Nora's time journal because remember, it's written in a language that's impervious to timeline changes, so no matter what future version of the Tornado Twins shows up, they'll still have Nora's journal from that earlier timeline. She left them a little message, just like Reverse Flash left Barry a message. Remember, at the beginning of Season 2, that's the whole reason he was able to get his father out of prison. One of the bigger Flash Season 6 teases is when Ralph opens a case file that says Dearborn on it. Sue Dibney's name, his wife from the comics, her maiden name is Dearborn, so it sounds like they're going to introduce Sue Dibney next year. But number one, the Crisis on Infinite Earth scene at the very end. So, the clock starts rolling back, timeline changes processing, and the clock just rolls back from 2024 to 2019, the date of this year's crossover. And the reason why the camera sort of fudges out before you see the exact day is probably because the CW network isn't sure which week is actually going to air the official crossover episodes. But like I said, pretty much all of Arrow Season 8 is gonna be Crisis episodes, with them dealing with Crisis on Infinite Earth stuff. They'll probably do a lot of that in the first half of the season of The Flash too, building up into the official crossover. So what I'll do is I'll do a Crisis teaser video with all the scenes from the shows together to explain what's happening at